The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit GiveStarQuest.com. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. Joining me today on the panel are Jack Barruzini. Hey, Jack.
Hey, Dom.
And Thomas Sanjurjo. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Dom.
So we've been talking a lot lately about AI and AI uses, and I have to acknowledge that there are some folks that were in our Discord community kind of saying, like, they don't like to use AI and they're worried about it. And I get that. I want to say that front. I get people's concerns about AI, about it taking people's jobs and that sort of stuff. And it is important, and the resources that it uses. Those are important concerns. And like with any technology, we have to weigh the good and the bad. And so I want to throw that out there. But these things are here, these tools, and they can be used well. They can also be used poorly. And so one of the aims I have here on the show is to talk about the ways in which we can use the tools responsibly while we're paying attention to what they do and making sure that the companies themselves are being ethical. So with that said up front, last time we talked about, the AI for beginners, a casual user's guide to basic AI stuff. But Jack, you came up with an idea to talk about programming with AI, or what some people call AI assisted coding or vibe coding. Why could you maybe just explain what it is you wanted to talk about with that? Like what interests you about this topic?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I've started to get into. I've been trying out Codex primarily. That's the one from OpenAI. I find it very interesting. And I also just want to talk about it because it's an interesting new avenue in the field of tech. Just both the opportunities that it opens up, some of the concerns that I and other people have about it. Just kind of to give an overview of it. Basically what it is you can, it's like interfacing with a chatbot to create computer programs. You use plain language to explain what you want. So like, let's say, for example, you wanted a spreadsheet app. You could type in, give me a spreadsheet app. I want it to do these things. You can format it. You can be as verbose as you want or as simple as you want. That's definitely going to affect the output of it. But it's just a very interesting way that you can start working on getting into computer programming without getting into the actual code. And I think the interesting thing about it is that, because my initial reaction was, I hate this. This is terrible. I can kind of be a curmudgeon about that kind of thing. But the more I thought about it, it's back in the day when people first started programming computers, they were doing it. Initially they were doing it in the literal ones and zeros. Like if you look at those old Apollo computers, it was literally, they were weaving them together, the ones and the zeros, based on how the wires went. And they had these huge bundles. And then it went to, you were programming in machine language, which is it's basically impossible to read without a guide. And then it started to get more and more human readable, like with BASIC and different things like that. And you have these different interpreted languages where you write the programming in code that probably everyone thinks of when you're doing computer programming, and it gets compiled down into machine language. And I feel like a lot of this AI assisted programming is just another level of abstraction on top of that, where you can now write your instructions in plain human readable language, which then gets compiled down into a compiled language, which then gets compiled down into machine code. So I've started to think about it less as this is terrible and more as this is a new way to understand architecture.
Okay. That's an excellent explanation. Thomas, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think that it's bringing a lot more of the power to the end user, and you don't have to go through a huge, computer science degree to get to kind of a product that is usable. Is it going to make code that's going to beat the best code out there that's architected by a person with a computer science degree? No, it is not going to do that. But if what you're trying to design is a website for use for your family, for example, for a football draft for fantasy football, It's great. I've done it. It's fantastic.
Right. And this is a thing, and it's especially something you brought up, Jack, which is like the level of abstraction. I feel like computer programming has always been about two things: understanding how computers work, thinking like a computer needs, like a program, and knowing the language. So you've got, it's like knowing how to cook, but having to do it in French if English is your native language.
Yeah.
And so you got to learn French first, and then you do the cooking. And this sort of takes away that having to learn a language. You still got to understand and think about how a program works. If you ever want something that is pretty useful, you've got to think you have to understand concepts, but you don't necessarily have to know the nitty gritty nuts and bolts of brackets and colons and that sort of thing.
Right, exactly. That's definitely something I've noticed, is that you need to have a very good grasp of the architecture that goes into it still. And that is going to have a big effect on how good your output is. Right,
exactly. And so the amount of expertise you need varies depending on the complexity of the sorts of problems you're trying to solve. So companies are going to still need to have engineers who use these tools. But now the bar has been lowered for anybody really to be able to start to do things on their own at home. And that's kind of what, an area I want to explore a little bit in this episode.
And the really interesting thing is, if you wanted to design a program for a very technical field, or for a very, like, you have a very specific idea that you want to execute, and your systems well, but you don't have time to drop all of that and learn code in order to make a better solution for yourself. That's where this kind of niche situation fits, because this takes that barrier to learning the code out, because the code is just really, it's a standardized language. Like you said, it's like learning French to be able to cook. What this allows you to do is, your stuff really well. You tell the chatbot kind of what you want. It starts taking a stab at the program. You don't like the results, and then you just modify it from there. You just refine it down to what your specs are for the thing that you're really good at.
Right. I want to get into that as we go along, but you're right. It's not magic. You don't just say, hand me a thing and it pops out the other end, like the Star Trek replicator. It's not quite that easy, but it is a lot easier than it used to be. Let's talk about some of the two main tools right now. I mean, there are a bunch of AI coding tools out there, but the two big heavyweights out there right now are, as you mentioned, Jack, Codex from OpenAI, which is the company that makes ChatGPT, and Claude Code from Anthropic. And those are the two big ones out there. And they both do basically the same thing. They turn natural language into working code. They can explain existing code to you. That's another nice thing, is you can give it a bunch of code. Say you work for a company that has a very old program that the programmer who made it is long gone, and you don't want to have to go through it line by line by line to figure it out. You can just say, look at this code and explain it to me. What's going on in this app? So that sort of thing. You can use it to find errors, debug errors, to automate repetitive digital tasks. So what's the difference between Codex and Claude Code? One of the ways you can look at it is Codex is more like a junior developer, and Claude is more like a thoughtful technical partner. And so what does that mean if you're not into programming? So Codex is really good at working with the tools, the developer tools. Is really good at structured coding tasks. That's more like an engineer. Whereas Claude Code is better at like the bigger picture. It's good with like strong reasoning. It's really good at large files and dealing with lots of context and that sort of thing. And so it's described sometimes like more like a collaborative assistant, which is not to say that they both are really good at what they do. In fact, they sort of, my understanding is they sort of leapfrog each other all the time. Every few weeks, they put out a new version, and Claude's a little better, then Codex is a little better, and back and forth. So it really, if you pick a tool, you're fine. In fact, you could use both tools to, again, with each other. Hey, look at this code. Now you look at this code and, see what happens. So those are the two main tools out there. And you can get pretty far with both of them without having to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
You may want to eventually to get more resources, but you can get pretty far free.
Yeah. And the thing I would caution there too is you might get outdated code if you're not paying, because it's running sometimes the newer ones are using models that are more up to date, but without the paying, sometimes you have older models, older agents that are working on the back end that will write good code for you, but it's, already got some bugs in it. It's already got some security features that you're going to want, that you won't know about if you aren't keeping up to date with that kind of stuff also.
That's a good point. And so some folks who are listening right now might wonder, like, why does this matter? I'm not a programmer. What do I care about this? Well, one of the big things is we're shifting the way this is a huge shift in technology. It is probably one of the biggest changes in technology since the web, perhaps. So we have this old model, learn programming, then build tools. And now we have a new model, describe the problem that you're trying to solve, and then refine the solution with the help of AI. And this is really what it is. What's going on here is we're going from hands-on nuts and bolts things to people who are good at critical thinking and describing and who are creative and have flexible minds are going to do better in this new world. Mm-hmm. And that means critical thinking, philosophical thinking, having great metaphysical outlooks on the world, all the sorts of things that from a Catholic great books education perspective are important. Mm-hmm. That's really going to be important in the world that is developing now. I don't know if you guys have the same perspective on that.
I do, and I've definitely noticed that on some of the projects I've worked on, because the AI assistant is the one that's handling the actual physical logic of how the flow is working, it frees you up to spend more time working on the big picture project where you're architecting the whole system and focusing on how the entire system works, rather than, I don't know why this specific logic issue is going on, and it's like a technical thing. So instead of spending hours working on one specific technical thing to get everything else working, you're working on the entire system.
Right.
And one of the really good things you can do too, and without thinking about the code is kind of the final product. And if you really go into the discussion with the AI about the problem and the solution that you think is best, or even just the problem, I have this set of things that I need to do. This is the way I'm questioning it currently, and these are the constraints that I have. You can get a really good solution set in place. And then the last thing you say is, can you write me a program that I can one click to do this thing on my desktop? And that's where it gets really powerful, because now you've given it so much context through the discussion, and you've given it all of the bounds that you are limited to. And then you ask it to write the code. And so now it knows a very good deal about what the whole project looks like, and then will write to that project specifically that you have in place.
Right. I find the biggest challenge when using these AI tools is being broad enough, open-minded enough in the way I phrase things. I often, I've been using computers for nearly 50 years. I know, I've always you have to have very narrow. You got to be very specific with computers. You got to, whenever you do a Google search, you don't just type in a couple sentences. You have to be use certain keywords, or, whenever you ask Alexa to do something, you have to phrase your request in a very specific way. That's no longer true with these. And I keep finding myself having to say, no. Just be broader, open up the context, give more, say more. And that's counterintuitive for me. I've been at this long enough that it feels counterintuitive to say more, but that's what it's really, it's all about clear thinking ability to describe the problem and being willing to look at a variety of possibilities, being open to possibilities, and kind of trusting in some ways. Not, and I say trust with the quotation marks. Trusting the AI to be able to see more possibilities than you can, than you've imagined. And I'm often surprised at how well AI comes up with solutions to things or presents a possibility. I'm like, oh, I would never have thought of that in a million years. And that's what and then you go from there. That's really the promise of these things, is they're just big context thinking machines where they just they see so much more.
And I think it's important to remember, it's not like the AI has this genius spark, and that's where a lot of people get kind of lost in the weeds of the philosophy of what's happening here. But the AI has cloud wisdom. It has collective wisdom that has been put together by all of the learning that it's done. And so it's if you imagine someone that's gone out and has a very, very broad, but also very deep understanding of many different things, sometimes things that you would never see in a group together of understanding. That's what you're getting with an AI. And when you leverage that for what it is, it does open up opportunities that you hadn't thought of. And then if you're really using it well, you're then going to follow up on those things and learn them for yourself. Like that was a really interesting thought that it had. Let me go do some research about that.
Right.
And that's something that's really good to do, is when you're building tools with either Codex or Claude, as it's going through, you can ask it to explain what it's doing to you. Like, if you want, you can go in and try to ignore the code as much as possible, but your product is not going to be as good because you're not actually learning what it's doing. But if you ask it to, as it's going along, say, hey, explain why you're doing it this way, how you're doing it this way, you will learn how it is building the tool, and you'll be getting a better understanding of what it's doing and also of code as you're going.
Right. It's like learning, like you can learn, sit down and read a book about how to build a house. But if you go to a job site and watch the place being built and ask questions as they're building it, or watch a YouTube video of guys doing it, whatever it is, it's a different experience. And I agree with you, Jack. Like, ask it questions and ask it at the level of your own prior knowledge. Hey, I don't know anything about coding. Tell me how this works. Explain it to me like I'm 12, and I love using that example. Like, explain to me like or in my case, the last time I learned I did programming, it was in Pascal, 35 years ago, probably, I've done like AppleScript and stuff like that, but like real programming, explain it to me. Like, I understand the concept of programming, but I don't know the language. So explain it to me. And then you can learn the things. And why learn if you're going to have the AI do it for you? Because then you are a collaborator in the process, and you'll be better at directing it to do the things you want it to do. And I think you're better off. Now, again, if you're just trying to do some quick and dirty, easy little hobby little projects on the side, you don't have to do that. I mean, as long as it ends up basically doing what you need to do, and it's not like, critical that everything is perfect. But if you're trying to do something a little more, then you're going to want some more. One of the areas where, and you can tell me if I'm off base on this, but the last time I was using these tools, where it's not so great yet, is in design, visual design. I think I've heard that they're getting the programs, the AIs are getting better at the visual design of programs, so that because the interface is as important as the functionality, the feature. And
I would say it's pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
You use inspiration. So a lot of times being nebulous with a description for design can be really difficult, but that's really difficult for a human. Now, one of the things I did when I was creating this fantasy football website for my family was I said, you know what? I really like the look of this website. I grabbed a snapshot of the screen, fed it into Claude, and said, I like the look of this website. Design mine like this. It made a nearly flawless CSS sheet that just did all of the styling exactly the way I wanted. The buttons looked great. There were a couple of little flubs, but that was more just because of kind of other architectural decisions I had made. Yep. And then I was able to fix those with just a couple of queries back and forth with it. So they're pretty good as long as you give some good inspiration for them to work off of.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and I got to say that I think this is something that a lot of people who work with computers, especially in the back end, run into is I'm terrible at designing interfaces, so I can't get mad at the way the AI is doing it. But yeah. I've been really impressed with, I've been using it mostly in Xcode, so it's programming in Swift, and it's using a lot of like the Apple templates. Mm-hmm. And it like what I've gone through and done is as I'm building it, I'll say, make this fit the Apple programming standards for apps, and it will go through and clean it up and make it look like a standard iOS app. I'm sure there's things I could do to make it look more unique or like prettier, but for what I'm trying to accomplish, I just want something that's functional. It does a really good job of matching the standards that Apple apps look for.
That's a good point. Yeah. So the last time I did a sort of a vibe coding project was the last time I touched it was probably 6 months ago. So I'm sure things have changed since then. But what I was working on, and I was using Codex for this. In fact, I think it was even before Codex as an app was out. I was just using ChatGPT. But I was making an iOS app for Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. We have a problem where the current feed that people subscribe to can only hold 300 episodes, and we've passed that part. We're over 400 episodes now, and people want to get the old episodes. So I wanted to make an app that could hold the entire feed, that could combine. There's several different RSS feeds and that sort of thing. But what I want, and then I wanted to present the video and the audio and the notes and all that stuff in one app. And I'm still working on it. But I got pretty far with it, like not knowing any. And what people should know is what it does is the program running on your computer controls the programming environment that you download from. In my case, I downloaded from Apple, or you could, I'm sure you could do it with the Microsoft ones and that sort of thing. But it controls those environments for you, and it's doing all of the technical stuff. And you're just saying, hey, let me see what it looks like now. And you run it like, oh, that button is too wide, or it's, I want to change that button and move it over here. And it will go through and do those things for you. And I'm sure like now it would be, given the advancements, it would be even better. But like I said, the last time I programmed anything in a computer language was probably 35 years ago. So it's amazing to me that I could get as far as I did with this as I have. We should probably talk about some other practical use cases for different sorts of people, because I think that's really where the interesting aspect of this discussion is. So from, in your home and personal life, that you could do things like you could have it even without creating a new program. You can use it to look at a folder full of thousands of files. Say you get thousands of PDFs or text documents or photos, and you could tell it to rename them and put them in folders or directories based on the context of look at the file, find out what it's about, and then rename it or tag it or put it in a folder based on that. This is new. Like you used to have to do, like I've been working on the file organization aspect of computing for a long time, like organizing files and stuff. And it's been hard for so long because computers don't understand the context unless you give it to them. Now they can read the document and say, hey, oh, that's what this is. I understand that this is a receipt from your gas company, and it came in on this date. For the longest time, it's like, look for the date on this bill. It'll be right. The first date you find, and it will be in this format. I don't have to do that anymore. I can just it reads it, and it's like a person does and knows. So that sort of thing. And
in that, like if you don't know how to get the files to the program as well, you can use it as a collaborator and ask it, what I have this idea of things that I want to do. What information do you need and how can I get that? And it can write a script for you a lot of times where you'll just drop the script in. It'll pull all of the information that it needs from like the metadata or whatever it needs. And then you can upload that in a simple file to it. and just treat it like a collaborator. Like start off with the question, what's the problem you want to solve? And then how do I get information that you need to help me solve this problem?
Right. You don't need to know how these things work ahead of time. You just need to be able to describe the problem that you're trying to solve. That's a good point. And go ahead, Jack.
I was going to say a good example of that is I know someone in my family who is asking about using ChatGPT and different AIs, and they're like, I want to try it out, but I really don't know how. How should I do it? And I told them they should just go and ask it how to use it, and it will give you a good guide.
Right. What's the best way for me to use it? And one of the best things to do is to tell it, I mentioned this last week in our discussion, ask me questions, interview me, ask me what I need, let's have a conversation about this, and they'll go back and forth with you. So yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, ask it. Other things you could do from your personal or home aspect, you could have it build a custom spreadsheet like an Excel or Numbers or Google Sheets, whatever, for personal finance, for your personal finance, so built to customize to your needs. Have it create scripts for backing up files or monitoring disk space or syncing folders across devices. These are all things where you used to have to go out and buy a program, learn how the program works, all this was. Now you can just say, create a script that does this for me, and it will do it.
And then the great thing for like a custom spreadsheet for personal finance, use the programs to template something. So just say, I need to get better with my finances. Make a spreadsheet for me. And then you look at the spreadsheet and you say, that's not exactly right. I actually do more of this and not as much of that. And then just refine the template that it gives you from there until you get something that you're comfortable with and that you like. And it's going to be a lot more likely that you're going to use it at that point.
Right. Exactly.
And that's something I've noticed is if you go out on the App Store or the Play Store and you're looking for apps for doing like meal planning or workout apps, with this kind of thing, you can explain exactly what you're looking for, and then it can build something that's tailored to your needs. Like I put together a workout app with the specific workouts I want to do using templates. I actually used ChatGPT to build the workouts based on what I was looking for. And then I loaded the templates it made for me into Codex and had it turn it into an app. And it was surprising how well it was able to do that.
Wow. That's awesome. I think I mentioned last week how I use Claude now. I started doing ChatGPT with this, but I use Claude for this now. Weekly meal planning for my family, 7 people, a variety of allergies, picky food uses, or picky food eaters, scheduling, Mondays, this, and that sort of thing, and weather for grilling. And I just it's all in there. Like I keep it I have actually what I do is I create a document that sits in a folder, and I tell it, look at read that document first. Now, based on that, look at my list of recipes and give me a meal plan. And it's never exactly what it gives me, but it's a place to start. And that sort of thing. It's not exactly running a program, but I don't actually need to create a program for that. Mm-hmm. It's doing that for me in a program-like way. Mm-hmm. If you see what I'm saying. So that's so it doesn't even have to necessarily code for you in that sense like that. So some other use cases. So like at work, or if you have a small business, sales tracking, a spreadsheets to, if you have like a whole bunch of spreadsheets tracking a whole bunch of different related things, maybe it can put them all together into one spreadsheet or database for you. Donor management, say if you were a nonprofit, for example. Yeah,
I do have one good example that is business focused. Is that if you are working in a company that develops programs and you might not be one of the specific programmers, or even if you are, and you have an idea for an app or an addition to a program, you can plan it out and build like the minimum viable product of that app with this. Mm-hmm. That way you can demo it to the higher up people, because the hardest thing to do is to be talking to an executive and trying to get them to understand what you're talking about when you're building a program, but you don't have something concrete to show them. This way you can build something that is probably you're going to want to go through it by hand later on and touch it up and actually build it into something that is a deployable app. But this is a great way to get a working demo really quickly.
Right. Mm-hmm. Prototyping. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a great idea. So another thing you could do is sort of like what you're talking about, Thomas, like website tweaking. Like if you have a website, so you have a WordPress site, and you just want to change something, but you don't understand, like you want to change how it looks a little. You don't understand how HTML and CSS work. Never mind PHP, which is what the programming of a WordPress site. Well, Codex and Cloud Code, sorry, they do understand those. They could do that sort of thing for you. I use it all the time to generate HTML snippets. Just to like, I often have to paste like lists of links on our on our show notes, and I like them as bulleted lists, but I have to put them in as HTML. So I just drop a whole, actually what I often do at the end of Secrets of Tech, when I'm just giving a little behind the scenes, I copy just all of the notes in our Google Doc, and I drop it into Claude and say, find all the links in this document, and then give me a list, a HTML unordered list of the links. And that used to take me so long before, and now it's just like nothing. So great.
Yeah.
So another thing you can do is like data cleanup, mailing lists, normalize inconsistent data fields. That's a big one if you have any kind of database. Merging duplicate records. If your database is of any size, you're going to start to find duplicates. So people have this in their photo libraries. This is the same thing with any kind of like database. So, and then on the hobbyist or DIY tech end of things, if you have a home server or a NAS, a network attached storage, you could automate scripts for backing things up or managing your media libraries. Like I have scripts that when I'm done with working with one of our shows, like an episode, I just tag it, a certain tag on my computer, and the script automatically just moves it to my network attached storage archive. Boom. I don't have to copy and wait and all that sort of stuff. It does it in the background while I'm moving on to the next thing. That's the sort of stuff. If you think about what are the things that are dragging me down, taking time, the grunt work, that's what's the sorts of things to think about. Yeah. You can also come up with some smart home things like smart home tech is great, but it sometimes feels like you're on rails with the way that some of it works. And you can create apps or scripts that kind of combine things or get around some of the limitations, like turn off devices if no one is home for X number of hours, and have it figure out how do I know that no one is home? How do I keep track of the hours? What kind of logic am I using? This sort of stuff. So that the smart home stuff is another great area.
I have it. On that note, I have a Raspberry Pi running Wireshark right now. So it's sniffing all my packets and listening to everything that's happening on my network. And I had Claude help me write code to kind of get the juicy data out of that I wanted. So I asked, so I took like a snippet of what was happening, uploaded it to Claude and say, hey, what's really important about this? Because if you've ever dived into networking, it gets really intense really fast. And it helped me kind of parse out what was really important out of the information and then to also put some filters on Wireshark that kind of limited what was being reported on. And so now I have a really great reporting tool that's telling me what kind of traffic is happening, like what kind of devices are connecting, when they're connecting, and different things like that. It gives me a lot of good information about my home, and especially as it comes to the IoT stuff that's going on. That's
a great point. And especially with the IoT stuff, keeping track of all the devices and what they're reporting back and what they're connecting to over the internet, keeping track of that sort of thing can be really useful. And then even for in this DIY or hobbyist space, learning projects like building. I want to build a calculator app. Show me how you build a calculator app. What's involved? Like if just because you're interested in the logic and how it works, or trackers or other simple apps, that sort of thing. It would be, you can use it to learn plenty of things. If you ever wanted to learn how to do Arduinos, which are like the little microcontrollers, or building little devices like you could use these things to help you code them and figure out how it works and new ways to use them, little motors and gears and all kinds of things, sensors of all kinds. Now, you don't have to have learned all this stuff ahead of time. You can use these inexpensive things to create fun projects with your kids, especially. Couple of real world examples is I already mentioned where I was creating an app for Mysterious World. Another one would be like a parish volunteer. So say your pastor comes to you and is like, look, we've got a bunch of spreadsheets and databases, and we're trying to make sense of it. And we've got people in a parishioner list. We've got a spreadsheet that has donors on it. We just want to bring it all together. And you could, not if you're not a programmer, you could create a program for your parish that creates a database of parishioners, of all of their different data, religious ed data, connecting everything together, custom reports, front end data entry forms so that people who are not technically savvy can enter data and all that sort of stuff. Like that's within the realm of possibility for someone to do who isn't themselves a programmer. Right?
Yeah, I was able to I built like a HTML JavaScript app, I guess it was TypeScript actually, that was able to, just using Codex, I was able to get it to connect to a Postgres database, set up all the connections, import the data, set up the imports, and then parse through, I think it was like 50,000 lines, all just using Codex to set that up. So it's surprising how well it can work with outside tools. So like if you have a database and you've never really done a lot of programming with databases, which if you're starting out early in programming, you're not really touching those. It does a great job of explaining that and then building it and having it actually work.
It just made me think. I have my old blog that I had for 20 years. It was a WordPress site, and I took it down a few years ago because it was just too expensive. So I spent a couple $100 a year to keep it online. And I've got the old MySQL database, and I would love to be able to search it. And I know they're front ends and stuff like that, but I just never got around to it. But I'm like, I could throw that at code and say, hey, create me a front end so that I can make it searchable, and I can look at all the entries that were on my blog, thousands and thousands of entries.
And just to remove the barrier of intimidation here too, because I think that's even there's a parish volunteer listening to us right now, and they're going, I don't even know where to get started with this. Sit down and have coffee with the Claude code, right? With Claude or with Cortex, just sit down and say, you know what? My pastor came to me and said, I need to take these documents and this database and put them all together so that they all make sense. How do I even get started? And that's it. That's the jumping off point. And then you start having the discussion, and it's going to pull in the tools that it needs as you start having that discussion with it. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you're going to say, okay, I need a way to read this. It's just like a simple website. And that's where it starts writing that code that it's going to output that you're going to use. And then you go, I don't even know how to use this. What do I do with it? It'll tell you how to install it and what to do with it and where to put it. So don't feel like you need to have the solution to get started. Just describe the problem and describe what your ideal world looks like when it's done. And that's where these systems are so good at being able to take those concepts and make them executable.
Right. Like we said at the beginning, you have to, the people who are going to succeed at this are people who are expressive and creative and have flexible thinking. That's what's important. To be open-minded, to be able to see things, to be to take a risk, just to kind of throw things out there, to brainstorm. That's what's going to serve you well when using these tools.
It wouldn't surprise me if the people who are the most successful with these tools are the people who have not coded before, because they're not coming in with that previous, they're not trying to break any paradigms in their mind of how this is supposed to work.
I agree. I think that's what it is. In fact, I think, like I've been, said a few times, like I think the people who will do the best are the people who are not traditional programmers or traditional sciencey folks. The science-minded people or the techie people. It's going to be creative people, which is kind of ironic because most of the creative people I know right now are the ones who are hating on AI. but as the tools mature, as the guardrails go up, as we all learn to live with these tools around us, I think we're gonna get used to it, and people will come around. I think, especially as it becomes more helpful and useful. There are risks and limitations, and so we should probably cover those a bit, just so we're clear-eyed as we go into things. AI coding breaks down. It can break down. There can be subtle bugs that it doesn't see. Sometimes they're better now, but they do still sometimes hallucinate in the sense of they kind of go off the rails a little bit. They can be overconfident in their solutions. And so that's the thing you got to be careful. That's one of the things I run to a lot is it confidently proposes, this is your solution. And then I try it and it says, that is not the solution. Oh, you're right. That is not the solution. This is the solution. So you gotta, it's a very enthusiastic. They want to please you. They're sycophants right now. These tools, you want to be wary of that. I think that's a big one. And then the third thing is security issues. One of the big concerns is, yes, they're doing all this programming, but one of the important aspects of making programs, making coding, is making sure there aren't security holes, areas where hackers or other people can get in and get access or break things. So it's important to understand that aspect as well. So there aren't great solutions for that just yet, but I have a feeling they're coming, given that Anthropic has this new tool called Mythos, which is so powerful at finding security holes that they won't release it to the public. So
that's scary, man.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a trickle down from all the context that Mythos is gathering that is going to end up making the code that these AIs write is going to be more secure because it's going to be working from that context now.
Right. And these areas where it breaks down, the AI coding breaks down now are going to get better over time.
Yeah. And to be clear too, like one of the really interesting things, I got to touch on this because this is like totally my area right here. The really interesting thing that Mythos is doing is bringing that broad, but also deep contextual knowledge to these problems. And so, for example, there was this really interesting security vulnerability that found in OpenBSD, which is one of the most secure code bases out there. And it's a 20-year-old bug. It's been in the code for 20 years. Nobody's exploited it because it leveraged a browser module to get in the back door of this code in a very, very weird way that required deep knowledge of OpenBSD, but also deep knowledge of browser modules. And nobody has those two things at the depth that it had. And that's how it did this CVE. So we're going to see a lot of really interesting 0 days coming up. A lot of developers are going to be, everybody who's worried about developers losing their job, this just opened the floodgates. And we're going to have developers that are going to have to be fixing stuff for the next 20 years because of this, because of how good Mythos is at this stuff. But at the same time, all of that, like you said, is going to trickle back into the coding base itself, so that the code is going to, when the system is writing code, it's going to look for those vulnerabilities as it's writing the code.
Right. So, as a practical matter, safeguarding, and we talked about this last week. It's the same thing. Give it sample data. Don't give it your actual financial data. At least to start with. Don't run unknown scripts blindly on important files or data or that sort of thing. Ask the AI to explain its code before running it. That way you have a better understanding of what's going on. And as always, the privacy considerations. These different tools have different privacy policies. Understand what the privacy policy is for OpenAI and Anthropic and Google, Gemini, and all the other AI tools you're using. Understand and make sure that you're setting the privacy to where you're comfortable with it. Yeah.
And I would also say understand the privacy policies of, if you're trying to use this in a professional setting, understand the privacy policies of your company. And also, like with the parish example, make sure you get permission before putting any information like that into a system like this.
Right, exactly. Just don't do it on your own. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there are legal and in the legal fields, the health fields, there are laws regarding that and sort of thing as well. So if you work in those fields, so
right.
So just I just want to wrap up here by saying if you want to get started with this, start with a small problem. Just get started. Ask for explanations first, then ask for code. Like have a conversation. Like Thomas said, have a conversation, then get to the coding. Iterate, simplify this, make it safer. That sort of thing. Don't just you don't have to accept the first thing it gives you. Work through it. Ask it to do more. Do more. Save working versions. So if this version works, save that. Then you can tell it to branch off and start a new one. And this is why when you have a regular program like Microsoft Office, you get new versions over time. They don't just keep iterating the code base. They put a stake in the ground and say, this one is stable, and now we're going to start working on the next version. And say things like, the sorts of things you want to say to it are things like, I want to do X. I'm not a programmer. Give me the simplest possible solution. Explain before giving me code. Like these are the sorts of phrases you want to use when doing this. And
two other things I want to add to this list too.
Okay.
That one, tell the AI who it is in this process as well. So if you can say, I have this problem, I need a developer to create an app for me. You are the developer creating the app for me. That gives it the context that it's working from, which can be really powerful because it can change the questions that it's asking and the design decisions that it makes early on. So it can be really powerful to kind of give that context, like what is the end product that I want from it. And then the other thing too is I like to avoid hallucination, and I found this habit to be really helpful early on. It's not as necessary anymore, but as you get deeper into a conversation, ask the chat to summarize the conversation so that I can start a new chat. And what it comes up with for a summary can sometimes be really interesting because you'll realize things that you've said to it or assumptions that you've made about the way that everything's going that haven't been correct, or that it's inferred from things that you've said that you didn't even realize you had let on. So those are two things that I would add to that.
That last thing you said is really important. The longer a conversation, a single chat goes on, the more likely it is to start hallucinating because it won't remember the first part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. So every once in a while, summarize everything we've said so that I can start a new chat with you to start from there, and then start a new chat with what it's given you. That's a good point.
One other thing I found to be helpful is that when you're working through it, ask it to refactor the code as it's going, because I've noticed that oftentimes, especially when you're starting out, it will build you the code in one big giant file. So you can ask it to refactor it, and it will break it up into much more manageable pieces, the way a project should be managed.
Okay. Simplify, make it more efficient. Even if you use words like that too, if like you don't know what refactoring is, but in telling it all, over and over, simplify, make it more efficient. Simplify, make it more efficient. Those are good phrases. All right. So just in closing, the real skill here is not programming; it's problem definition. This is going to be the biggest shift in computing since the web, and before that, since personal computers. Like this is a big change in how things happen. So very interesting times. So before we move on, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of technology, including Kira M, Julia K, Martin R, David L, and Sindel T. Their generous donations at GiveStarQuest.com make it possible for us to continue the secrets of technology and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting GiveStarQuest.com. So we have several headlines we want to talk about. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the Artemis 2 mission has returned from its orbit around the moon. And one of the cool things that's been happening ever since they got back is we're seeing more and more images and more stuff coming out from that trip, as they're releasing things. And one of the cool things I saw was Reed Wiseman, who was the commander of the mission, who's on X. He posted a video of Earth set. So sunset. This is the Earth setting behind the moon. He shot it on his iPhone 17 Pro that he brought with him out through the window, and it is amazing. Like you got to click the link and watch it.
It's incredible. Really, like that's just mind blowing.
It's really cool to see because you're seeing it from the kind of camera that many people have. It's not like they have some super nice Nikon, which they took like really nice professional cameras with them, but it's so cool to see this almost in like it's like a home video from space, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
If you were there, you could have taken the same video with your phone. You know, that's just, and to hear them in the background, right? All the astronauts kind of talking to each other, like, "Ooh, cool," you know, like they're giddy, you know, and it's great. Yeah. It's so awesome. One of the ancillary aspects of this, my wife was saying that she found out they took a poetry course. The astronauts took a class in poetry so that they could talk about the moon in poetic terms. I love that idea that we've encompassed the whole human condition, all of our humanness in preparing them for this mission.
That's really cool.
It's also cool just thinking about the fact that phone that he has, it looked like they all took iPhones with them, but just that phone is an order of magnitude more computing power than the entire computer that got the Apollo astronauts to the moon. Right? It's just wild to think about.
Then all of the computing power of NASA at the time of the Apollo missions. My watch has more power than the Apollo computers on board.
Yeah.
It is wild.
On that note, Hank Green did a really, really great teardown on YouTube of this. And if you just need a moment to kind of breathe and appreciate the bigness of this moment and kind of like wonder at humanity, I really definitely recommend his take on all of these. We'll have the link in the show notes because it's really great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what a time to be alive. So speaking of space stuff, there's another headline, the New Glenn rocket. So we have SpaceX, we have New Glenn from Blue Origin, their New Glenn rocket, which is it's a big heavy lifter, like Starship, the Falcon Heavy, I think was really closer, to this. They got it launched. They've been launching stuff with it, and the rocket itself was good. But they had trouble with the satellite that they launched, unfortunately.
Payload delivery didn't work, which I'm worried about this because this one's the one that they were going to do Artemis 3 with. So, NASA's paying really close attention to it, and that's why they've grounded it. But this is the actual ground to space system worked, but something failed in the delivery system once they got out of atmosphere, which that's not good because you can get out in space, but then you've got somebody stranded in space that can't get back. You don't want that. That's the bad condition.
Right. So in Artemis 3, which is going to go up next year, they're not actually going to the moon. They're just going to be in orbit around the planet. But they're going to be doing a mission where they're going to be testing the lunar landers, and there's going to be two different ones. SpaceX has got their lunar lander based on the Starship, and then Blue Origin has one called Blue Moon lunar lander, which will be launched by New Glenn. And what they'll do is they're going to launch them to orbit, and then the Artemis rocket will go up with the Orion spacecraft, and they're going to practice docking with the different ones and maneuvering them around. And because these things have got to go to the moon, land, and take off again, just like we want them to come back after the missions. And so this is going to be a proof of concept for refueling in orbit and all these other things. And New Glenn is going to launch the Blue Moon lander. And if there's a problem, they need to fix that before we get there. So that's what we're talking about. So, they get time, plenty of time. No worries. Yep. They'll figure it out. In the meantime, in May, the next Falcon Starship Heavy is going to be launched. They're going to do another Starship Heavy test in May from SpaceX from down in Texas. So that'll be fun to watch. Looking forward to that. And then one last headline. Just a little news. The world's most valuable company is a change of leadership. So Tim Cook is retiring as CEO of Apple, and he will become the executive chairman. And then John Turnus who's been working at Apple for 20-something years, and he's been the head of hardware, essentially, for Apple. He's going to become CEO starting this fall, and it's September 1st, so right before the next iPhone announcements, which is probably a good time for him to take over. It's an interesting thing because last time we had a change in CEOs at Apple, they didn't have time to really prepare. Steve Jobs was very sick. He had to step down pretty suddenly. Tim Cook took over, and then Jobs died pretty soon after, unfortunately. I think John Turnus will be pretty happy to have somebody, to have his predecessor around for a while to kind of tell him how things work and, where the keys to the executive washroom are and that sort of stuff. But what do you guys think of the news? Is it good news, bad news? What do you think of this?
It's an interesting pick, in my opinion, because Cook came from being the head of operations, basically, or something along that line.
He's an operations guy. Yep.
Yeah. So to pick the hardware guy to lead going forward is an interesting choice, in my opinion. But it shows kind of I feel like it shows where Apple's headed, and that Apple's not concerned about getting into the AI race super heavily or anything like that. They're going to keep going with what makes them great, which is the hardware that they put out.
Right.
I was going to say, I think that him following up Tim Cook, because Tim Cook, his bread and butter was logistics and supply chain, and he's gotten Apple to the point where they can make things like the MacBook Neo for like $500. Their supply chains are so tight and they have such good processes now that it will be interesting to see someone who is very hardware focused be put in charge so they can utilize that supply chain to make new hardware.
Right. Yeah. Apple's strength is in its hardware. I mean, everyone knows that. It's the hardware that really, the software is important, but the hardware is really their where they stand up head and shoulders. And having a hardware guy running things, it'll be very interesting to see. I mean, Tim was no slouch, and everyone says, "Oh, the iPhone was Steve Jobs' baby." The iPhone 4 was when Steve Jobs died. All the iPhones since then have been Tim Cook. I mean, the company today, 15 years later, of Apple is a very different company than it was 15 years ago. Tim Cook has done a huge amount of work to bring it where it is, and I'm glad to see this kind of continuity. They're not bringing in someone from the outside. It's not a controversial pick. It seems to be a very popular pick. So I'm interested to see where it goes. Also, Tim Cook is sticking around as executive chairman, which means mostly this says what he's going to be doing is interfacing with government officials. He's going to be Tim Apple for a while with Donald Trump and China and other places. Let's put it that way. I heard an interesting perspective, which is Apple is such a big company. It's like its own country, and he's the chief diplomat in a sense. And he's created these personal relationships with leaders from around the world. That's invaluable to have that. So it's good to see he's sticking around as both I'm an Apple stockholder, but also an Apple user and fan. So I'm happy. I'm pretty happy with this result. So let's move on to our picks of the week. And why don't we start with you, Jack? What's your pick this week?
So my pick of the week is the Lafont robot vacuum. We just call it a Roomba. I feel like Roomba is the kind of the band-aid of but it's really good. We've had ours for about a year now. We run it every night. It drives through the house, gets an insane amount of cat hair, which I'm always impressed by. And it's currently on sale for $90.
Wow.
Which I saw that. I was like, that's a great deal for that. You can connect it to an app and control it from your phone, or you can control it through Google Home or Alexa. I haven't even connected mine because I'm done with all the smart home stuff. I just hit the button, set up the schedule, and it just runs, and it's been fantastic. It's very durable too. It is actually at one point driven itself down the stairs and then kept going, which I felt a little bit like that in that episode of Doctor Who where the Dalek gets up the stairs. It made me think of that. But it's definitely for $90, it's a great robot vacuum. That is surprising price. I mean, I'm sure there are robot vacuums with more bells and whistles and whiz bang features, but if you just want something really basic, that does the job, that sounds pretty good. You've got little ones, right? You've got little kids. Yeah.
How's it deal with all of the stuff that little kids leave laying about, or are you better than I am? And none of that stuff is all over the place.
Oh, it's definitely all over the place. It does a pretty good job of just pushing things out of the way. The biggest thing it will get caught up on is if it's something is a string, it will get caught up in the blades. Yep. But that's pretty easy. You just pop it off, stick it back on. So every so often we'll come down in the morning and it will have stopped because it got caught in some doll's hair or something like that. But it's never broken anything, and it's never been broken.
Good.
Ours always gets caught under the dishwasher.
Nice. Just that right height.
Just that right height.
We don't have a dog. The thing I worry about is the infamous what happens if your dog has an accident and the Roomba goes over it and spreads it through the house. the old ones that used to do that. Apparently, some of the new fancy ones have been designed to avoid. Like they do AI recognition. That's dog poo. Don't run over it. So that's excellent. That $90. That's in my budget even. I mean that's pretty cool. I might have to convince my wife to let me buy it. And not another gadget. Anyway, good. Thomas, what's your pick?
All right, so mine for this week is an app for local pizza joints. The app is called Slice. You can go to slicelife.com to check it out. They don't have much about themselves on there. They're mostly trying to advertise to restaurants, so you don't get too much information. But it is a great app, and it has if I can't promise what you have in your area on it, but a lot of local pizza shops near me are on this app, and we've discovered some real gems by going through and checking it out. Not everybody will have delivery because they just don't have the capacity for it, but being able to order for pickup and just getting the recommendations for what's in the area, along with some pictures and the menu in an interactive way, is fantastic. And so, we're big pizza buffs around here. We are great at making pizza ourselves, but every once in a while you just want a pie from somewhere else. And so we've found some really good ones near us. We recently moved, and the selections that I had available to me moved based on our new location. And we found a really great new joint because of that. So highly recommend it. It's called Slice, and really easy to order and does all the stuff for you.
That's awesome. This is great in Massachusetts because we have the highest per capita pizza places in the country.
There you go.
I think in most states it's 3 pizza places per 10,000. Or no, it's 2 per 10,000. Massachusetts is 3. In my town, where we have 11,000 people, we have 6 pizza places.
Oh my gosh! Awesome.
So, and most of them are on here, which is awesome. I was just looking at it.
There you go.
That's pretty good. That's
the great thing is it's local pizza too. So I'm not talking about like Pizza Hut or Domino's or anything. These are like local guys that have a parlor that or just baking pizzas to be able to deliver them.
Exactly. And this Slice has been around for ages too. This has been a long time. They're not fly by night, and so it's really great. And they're not super expensive. They don't add big extra fees like DoorDash and Grubhub and Uber Eats does too. That's another important aspect. Excellent. So my pick this week is something a little thing. It's solved. It's very simple, and it's solved the problem for me. I have passed on old iPads to my daughters, who are all artists, and they all like to draw. They do art on their iPads. Some of them are the really old ones, like with the non-magnetic Apple Pencil, but the kind that sticks into the port. And they're constantly losing them. Even the magnetic ones, like the magnetic ones, it sits on the top, but if you put it down anywhere, it's going to fall off. Did I ever tell you about the time I lost my Apple Pencil for like a week until I discovered it was stuck to the bottom of a pan sitting on top of my toaster oven?
Yep, I remember you saying that. I
just turned to look and go, is that my Apple Pencil? I don't know how. Like someone must have put it down or whatever. In any case, the solution I had to this was this little device, and there's a bunch of different ones on Amazon. But this is the one I got, the Moco pencil holder sticker. And what it is it's very simply, it's a little pocket shaped like a pencil. It's like a scabbard for your pencil with adhesive on the back. And all you do is just put the adhesive and stick it to, in this case, I have them put it on the case that we always put the iPads in. So it doesn't stick to the iPad itself. But then you just keep your pencil in it. And now the pencil isn't in the couch cushion. It's not beside the bed, or Lord knows where some of them, because these Apple pencils are not cheap. Even the least expensive one is still like $60-$70. And I don't like having to buy new ones. And there's nothing like looking at the sad face of your daughter who can't do her drawing because she's lost her Apple Pencil again. So
I know that feeling.
So for $6, you can avoid that feeling as long as she puts it back in the slot when she's done. I've told her this. There's one of them that has been the most problems with this, the youngest. So the Moco pencil holder sticker fit Apple Pencil Pro. You know how Amazon names go. So, but there's a bunch of them there, and you could pick one you like. But this one worked for me. All right, and those are our picks of the week, and that's it from us this time. We'd love to get your feedback on anything we talked about in our discussion. And you can do that by sending us an email to technology@sqpn.com. Visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. You'll find links to from our discussion and picks of the week on our show notes at starquest.fm/TEC341. And of course, you can find previous episodes at sqpn.com/technology. And be sure to follow us in Apple Podcasts, or on Spotify, TuneIn, in your favorite podcast app, or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where, of course, when you go there, you should subscribe, hit the bell, get notifications, all the YouTube-y things. And we always appreciate it if you write a review wherever you can write reviews, give us a rating, and share the podcast with somebody who you think would enjoy it and get something out of it. So until next time, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of technology.
It's been great.
Jack Barruzini, thank you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Technology on StarQuest. Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy, The Catholics of Oz. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/Oz.